What's up, everybody? This is Jake Burkey with Busted Knuckle Off-Road, and I'm going to show you a handful of the items that you need to bring out on the trail with you. So back in the day, whenever I first started off-roading, I had a Jeep, and we used to carry everything with us. We used to go to Teleco, and whenever you broke, you were like 2 hours away from camp, and you had to bring everything. We had axle shafts, we had lockouts, we had alternators and welders, onboard air, and everything to get you out of the woods. But today, everything's evolved. These buggies are a whole lot stronger. UTVs and things are just making it easier and easier, and you don't really have to go as far because most of the off-road parks are even more accessible than back in the day. So we've kind of dwindled down the things that we generally bring out on the trail with us, and now we have just a handful of must-haves that we bring out on the trail with us. And honestly, if there's something that you see that you're like, man, I bring this out on the trail, go down in the comments and leave it so that we can look at it and go, by God, that's a good idea, and let everybody else know as well. Now, obviously, you want to tailor these items to your particular rig, and you're going to be the one who knows more than anybody else what you are susceptible to break. Now, if you're a side-by-side guy, you're probably going to want to bring like 2 spare axle shafts, 2 spare belts, a whole complete body with I'm just kidding, guys, but those things are really frail. Now, for all the full-size guys out there that have buggies and stuff, we're going to talk about some of the things that I generally use and I've seen used on the trail to help people get out. So everything that I usually bring can fit pretty much in one of these packouts these days. There's a few items that I have to bring that are outside the packout, but for the most part, I can get out of the woods with just the stuff that's in here. So one of the things that a lot of people bring is this koozie right here. It's got to be the Busted Knuckle one, or obviously it's not going to work. But we use this all the time for doing crazy stuff like there's always a spot in the buggy that bangs your knee, so you can stick this right here and it keeps you from banging your knee. You can also use this for your beverage. I've seen people use this for putting like WD-40 cans, but we've used it before for extracting axle shafts out of a broken rear end, and it works really, really good. This is my pack out from this past weekend. I haven't changed anything or whatever. I just want to show you what I bring out on the trail. This is an empty automatic transmission fluid container because we used it, because it came in handy. I always carry a couple water bottles. I like to drink a lot of water on the trail, but what you can use this for, if you cut this up, you can actually spin it around in a circle and it makes a funnel that you can use to get the transmission fluid in. All right, so I've got this Milwaukee little bag right here, and it's got my winch controller in there because inevitably somebody's gonna flip over and you gotta flip them back or you gotta pull somebody out of the woods. This snatch block is excellent for being able to come off the front of the winch, hit a tree, come back, flip yourself if you're like me and like to flip over with nobody around. And then you've got a whole bunch of these little soft shackles, and I use these for all sorts of different things. And I've got one real long rope that has 2 open ends on it, and I'll use this to go around a tree or around a vehicle or something like that, or use it as an extension for my winch line. And that right there is kind of the basics of what I would recommend for anybody that's going to be going off-road. If you're going off-road, I don't care who you are, you need to have a first aid kit in your vehicle. Now, this right here has saved my butt a couple different times. I always carry Benadryl inside here because I've had people go into shock because they've had like a bee sting or something, and we ended up having to really do some crazy stuff to get them out of the woods. And then I've got a fire extinguisher, obviously, because people catch on fire all the time, and I've put out a bunch of fires with this thing here. So I use ponchos because obviously I'm not going to stop wheeling if it's raining outside and I'm in an open cab vehicle. So I've got 2 ponchos, 2 for me, none for the passenger, but I also use these things for laying out. If I have to go underneath a buggy or something and it's tore up, I can use these for laying down on the bottom. I've used these before when it's really, really cold. They actually do retain some type of heat. And then if you have to rebuild your buddy's parts because he broke, you can lay this out and it keeps like your U-joints and stuff from getting a bunch of mud in them. You've got to have some type of lube, because there's really 2 different things that you have problems with. Either something that's supposed to move or something that's not supposed to move. We've got tape and zip ties and ratchet straps for the stuff that's moving and shouldn't, and then we have lubrication for the stuff that's supposed to move and isn't. You gotta have a headlamp. No matter what happens, if it's at night, you're going to break something, you're going to lose something, you're going to drop something, you're going to lose your glasses. And this little headlamp right here has come in handy so many times. All right, so another thing you need is going to be a clean rag, because whenever you're checking fluids and things, you need to make sure you have a clean rag to be able to do that, and clean your hands and stuff like that. And then I've got this little ratchet, and this thing comes in handy like all the time. I use it for shock tuning, but I can't tell you how many times I've had to use one of these bits, which it comes with a ton, just to tighten something up on somebody's rig, or even my own, like a body panel gets loose or something. So this little kit right here, even though it's small, really does come in handy. I always carry a couple of crescent wrenches, because obviously these can do multiple sizes. But another thing is this little gator grip, because this will do multiple sizes. Now, a lot of people hate on these little gator grips, but honestly, I love them. Like, putting them in your toolbox at your house, that might not be the coolest thing, but like out on the trail, you can get to an insane amount of different little brackets and tabs, and you can hold on to stuff that's not even a bolt with these things. And these two together, you'd be surprised what you can get done. Obviously, you got to have a screwdriver. Now, you can use these for all sorts of things. You can use them for prying. You can use them as a screwdriver. You can use them as a chisel. You can use these to get your tire back on the bead. You got to have a flathead screwdriver. Small pair of pliers. Obviously, you can use this for all sorts of stuff, but a small pair of pliers comes in handy a lot. I always bring a gauge so I can check my air pressures in my tires, make sure that I've got the optimum performance. And then this little valve core tool right here works amazing. It's got a whole bunch of different little things on it, so you can like screw it in and pull a new valve core into your wheel. You can use this to actually remove the valve core. You can use this to tap the hole, and you can use this to ream it out. It's pretty cool. Zip ties, don't even have to talk about it. You gotta have them. Electrical tape, you gotta have electrical tape. If you're gonna be off-roading, you don't have to use it for electrical. You can use it for all sorts of stuff. Cut your finger, electrical tape. Something's moving, electrical tape. Somebody's talking too much trash, electrical tape. Now, since we're going through my pack out, we're just going to show you everything. I found these Q-tips. I don't actually know why I have these, but I suppose you could use these for, like, you know, pushing a wound together or something, or cleaning something electrical, or maybe even cleaning your ears. You got to have a pair of gloves, because you just never know when you have to deal with something that's hot, or you have to run the winch line. So a pair of gloves is a must. This is something that I always bring, because I know that our rigs have a very specific brake line. So this is just a -3 AN brake line, and it fits all four corners on my particular rig and anybody else who has a busted knuckle rig. So I always carry just one brake line. You absolutely have to have a ratchet strap if you're off-roading, period. You cannot call yourself an off-roader if you don't bring a ratchet strap out on the trail. I always carry a handful of fuses and a switch. I can't tell you how many times we've been off-roading and somebody's switch just goes bad, and you can just take the wires off and put them on this, electrical tape them on, flip on your fans, and get back to civilization. And I carry just a couple different connectors and a couple different fuses. And so with all my fuses and connectors and stuff like that, I carry a beer tab, because one time I was in Teleco, and we had a situation where this guy's rig just kept on popping fuses left and right. And we ran out of fuses, and all we had was like these 10 amps, and we knew that the circuit was at least 30 amps. And it kept on popping fuses, so we ended up taking a beer tab, and if you break it off, it's actually the same width as a standard fuse. You can break that off right there, stick it in, and I think they're good for about 100 amps. Fuse, 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 beer tab. And an added benefit of the beer tab is now you'll know exactly where the problem is, because all you have to do is look for the fire, which is why we have the fire extinguisher. I always carry a relay, because I can't tell you how many times I've been out four-wheeling with somebody who's just had a relay go bad, and you need to just be able to get a relay into the rig to get it back to camp. And I always bring a handful of wire in different sizes. So I've got some small stuff and I've got some real thick stuff. This is something that I always like to bring on the trail, because I cannot stand it when people throw trash on the side of the trail. That is the probably #1 thing that pisses me off and closes off-road parks. This is a trail sack. You can take this thing, fold it out, and just when you go in, pick up trash and bring it back out. This right here is saving off-road parks and keeping the trails clean. And having one of these also makes it so that you're keeping the trails clean, but you can pick up those items I was talking about earlier, like the beer tab. There's going to be beer cans and Coke cans and stuff everywhere. You can pick those up and save the environment and save the trails, but also have that electrical hack I was talking about. And you can get that water bottle I was telling you about, so you can make a really nice funnel. All right, so you got to have a knife if you're out on the trail, and you also can't call yourself a man without a knife anyways. You got to have a lighter if you're out on the trail, because you never know when you need to heat something up or start a fire. I always bring a tire plug kit with me. I haven't had to use this yet, but it's always great to have a tire plug kit just in case you get a cut inside of your tire and you don't have a spare. I always bring gas with me, especially for those long rides where you got to go a long distance. Bring a couple jugs. That way at lunchtime you can top back off and you don't have to worry about running out. You got to have an air compressor for all those times when either you or your buddy cuts a tire. You can get the tires aired back up and get back to wheeling. It goes without saying, but you have to have a cooler out on the trail. And these little Packout mounts are a great way to do that. You can get this from Busted Knuckle Off-Road. They just bolt into the back of your buggy, and you can take this cooler and literally just snap it right in. One of the last things that I always say to bring out on the trail is just a couple snacks. I love pistachios, so I throw these in my little Packout. And whenever somebody else is broke down and you're sitting there on top of the hill because you have a Busted Knuckle buggy and you're looking down on them, you can eat your pistachios. Obviously, guys, you need to take a look at your rig and figure out if there's some specialty stuff that you need to bring out on the trail. If you're the type of person who has a completely built vehicle, maybe you don't need quite as much. If you're in a RZR, you're going to need a couple axle shafts, you're going to need a spare diff, you're going to need a transmission, you're probably going to need a new engine, you're going to need coilover, you're going to need wheels and tires and A-arms. Now, for everybody else that's out there, pack whatever it is that you think that you possibly could have an issue with on your rig. Now, these are just the basics. Obviously, you can build from there. Just make sure you have at least this when you go out on the trail. And guys, share this out with your buddies, because I want to see the funny stuff that y'all come up with in the comments. This was a cool video just to kind of goof around. Go down in the comments and like call out your friends and stuff like that, especially that guy with a Dana 30 and 40s. Guys, make sure you go to bustedknuckleoffroad.com to get all of your off-road stuff, and have fun out there in the woods, man. It's all about having a good time and having a good relationship and just doing cool stuff. And one more thing. All right, guys. I don't know if you can call yourself a man without having a belt. But if you are one of those guys that don't wear a belt, I can tell you from experience that this thing right here comes in handy for all sorts of stuff. One time, I was out four-wheeling, and I actually broke my drive shaft, and I used this to make a sling so that I could drive back to camp with my drive shaft spinning down here. Now, unfortunately, later on that night, I had a little incident, and if you know me really well, you know exactly what I'm talking about, but having a belt off-road is an absolute must.